So, I disembarked the Allure of the Seas yesterday, and it was Royal Caribbean's first cruise of the Oasis class since COVID. And some things were different. If you're interested to know what those are, keep watching. Hi everybody, I'm Kim. Welcome to my channel. I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are. I am having a pretty frantic day because we just got off the Allure yesterday after a 7-day Caribbean cruise, and I have mountains of laundry, and my daughter is leaving for college on Thursday. So got a lot going on, but it's all good. I am here today with I guess she's my co-host today. This is Bimini. I was fortunate enough to be on the first sailing of the Allure of the Seas since the pandemic, and I really wanted to give you all the information about the policies and procedures that Royal Caribbean has put in place to protect its passengers and its crew. If you are planning to cruise anytime soon, hopefully this information will be helpful to you. And I just want to let you know that I will be doing a full cruise review video. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so that you'll be notified when that video is uploaded. So we booked this cruise probably 3 months ago. It was for my daughter's graduation and her birthday, and it was a celebration. We cruise a lot. This is probably I've cruised on Royal for over 20 times for sure, and this was my 4th time on the Allure. So I definitely knew what cruising was like before the pandemic, and I was very interested to find out what it's like since. When we booked the cruise, it was open to both vaccinated and unvaccinated guests, meaning you didn't have to be vaccinated. If you were not vaccinated, there were additional procedures and testing that you would have to do during the cruise, but we are all vaccinated, so that didn't really apply to us. 2 weeks before the cruise, we got a notification from Royal Caribbean that St. Thomas was not allowing cruise ships with unvaccinated passengers into the port. They were allowing children under 12 who was unvaccinated to get to go to the port, but I'll get into that later. Anyone who was eligible to be vaccinated had to be vaccinated. And they gave everyone who didn't like that policy or couldn't cruise a full refund. A week before the cruise, we got another notification from Royal Caribbean. This time they said that we had to have a negative COVID test within 3 days of sailing. So not only did we have to have proof of vaccination, but we also had to have a negative COVID test. So that was a bit of a scramble. I think it was maybe 5 days before sailing. So that's kind of what took place beforehand. Now this cruise left out of Port Canaveral, which is about 3 hours from us. So Royal had given us an assigned time to arrive, and that was 3 p.m. We arrived about 2:15, and right as we arrived, they were starting to let the 3 o'clock passengers into the line outside to go into the terminal. And if you were after 3 o'clock, they were not allowing you to get in line. They were checking very, very carefully. Before they would even allow us inside the cruise terminal, they checked our vaccination records. They physically looked at them and checked. We were not allowed to step inside without providing our vaccination cards. Once we got in, there was another line, of course, and eventually we got to the medical screening section. And there they looked at our vaccination records, and they took photos of them. They inspected them very, very carefully. Then they asked for our coronavirus tests. They checked those. They logged the date that the test was given. They, took pictures, I believe, and then they asked us medical questions. Do we have a fever? Have we been in contact with anyone who has had the coronavirus in the past? Whatever. So once we answered all of those, we were cleared to go into the x-ray section where they're going to x-ray our carry-ons. Once we were cleared, they gave us a blue band. That band basically meant that we were vaccinated guests and that we had to keep that on at all times, swimming, showering. Then they gave us a tracelet, which is basically a bracelet. Mine was orange, my daughter's was pink, my husband's was green. The tracelet, they told us that we were to wear anytime we left our cabin. We were supposed to take it off if we went swimming or if we showered. Otherwise, once we left the cabin, we were supposed to have the tracelet on. This tracelet tracked our every movement around the ship so that if there was a positive coronavirus case, they would be able to tell who was in close proximity to the person who was diagnosed. It's kind of sci-fi. So once we were given our bracelet and our tracelet, we went through the x-ray machines, and then we were allowed to board the ship. Once we got to the ship, they once again checked our vaccination record. So that is the third time. Now, this cruise had 1,800 passengers on it, which was pretty interesting because the Allure can hold 5,000 passengers, so it was less than half full. I asked how many passengers are on board. They said about 1,800, and then they told us to go ahead and do muster. Muster drill is usually where you go to an area and you stand for about 30 minutes, and then they show you how to put on a life vest, and they tell you about the emergency procedures, where to report to, what the siren sounds like, that kind of thing. But this time, there was something different. They told us that we needed to watch the video on our phone. We watched the video of how to put on the life vest. There was also a video of the emergency ship siren. And then after that, we just had to go to our muster station so we would know where to report if there was an emergency. And there they scanned our CPAS cards, and that was it. So that was actually a really nice change from how they normally do things. Now, masks were required on the ship when you were indoors. You did not have to wear the mask on deck. You didn't have to wear it in the solarium. You didn't have to wear it on the boardwalk. It was very interesting because there were designated vaccinated guest areas. One was the casino, the schooner bar, the rising tide bar, and those were all marked in your compass. But what was interesting about this is that you would walk in, they would check your band to make sure you were wearing your vaccination band, and then once you were in that venue, you could take off your mask. So if you were in the casino and you wanted to move from machine to machine, you did not have to wear a mask. If you were in the schooner bar and you wanted to walk up to the bar and maybe ask for a glass of water, you did not have to wear a mask. Really, you only wore it to go from space to space, and then once you were there, if you were in a vaccinated guest area, then you could take your mask off. Now, one of the things that is interesting is that the casino, as I said, was a vaccinated guest area only. So if you were traveling with a child who could not be vaccinated, you could not cut through the casino. So that's just something that you might want to keep in mind. I know that a lot of times, you're trying to get where you want to go, and the casino is the shortest way to get there. And they were allowing unvaccinated children on this cruise, but anyone who was eligible to be vaccinated had to be vaccinated. Something else that was a little different is that any narrow stairways, all of those were roped off. You could not use them. They were trying to promote social distancing so that people wouldn't pass each other in close proximity on the stairwells. Also, on the compass, on the list of activities, some of them would have a V next to it, and those activities were for vaccinated guests. Now, these were activities that were for older teens or adults anyway, so you had to be vaccinated. Things like the poker tournament, the slot tournament, they did have a V next to certain activities, letting you know that those were for vaccinated guests only. The Windjammer was open for breakfast and lunch on our cruise, but the buffet was not open for dinner. I don't know why. Maybe it was because of capacity being so low, it wasn't needed, or extra sanitization. I'm not really sure. But when you did go to the Windjammer, they would scan your CPAS card as you entered and when you left. I think this was an extra precaution in case there was a positive case. They would know if you were in the Windjammer at the same time, but they've never scanned my card on any previous Royal Caribbean cruise that I've been on. The buffet, as you would expect, is a little different. There's no more grabbing tongs, to help yourself to fries and pizza. Instead, you simply walk up to the server and you say, "Hey, I would like some turkey, please," and they would just put it on your plate. There were also several grab and go options, so individual bowls of fruit or individual salads that you could just grab the bowl and take it back to your table. A couple other changes: they were trying to enforce social distancing as much as they possibly could. Every other table was marked that you couldn't use it. There were signs by the elevators asking you to limit the number of passengers to 6 or less, or your traveling party. So if you were traveling with a group of 10, you could all take the elevator together. This was not a problem for us because the cruise wasn't full, so we pretty much had elevators to ourselves. which never ever happens. Similarly, there were signs by all of the hot tubs asking you to limit the capacity of the hot tub to your traveling party. I didn't see any enforcement of this at all, but the signs were prominently displayed. So let's talk about the ports. We stopped at St. Martin first, then St. Thomas, and then Castaway Cay. St. Martin and St. Thomas were pretty much getting off the ship was just business as usual. They scanned your SeaPass card when you got off, and they scanned it when you got back on. Both ports required masks to be worn as you got off the ship, on public transport, indoors, and anywhere that you really couldn't be socially distanced. They were stricter about this in St. Thomas for sure. We went to Megan Bay, which was beautiful. And if you were laying on the beach or you were at a table eating or drinking, you did not have to wear a mask. But if you got up to order another cocktail or to get some good Caribbean food, even if it was an outdoor serving area, an outdoor bar, they would require you to wear a mask. Now, if you were traveling with an unvaccinated child, you were required to book a Royal Caribbean excursion in order to get off the ship with that child. We did run into one couple at Maho Beach in St. Martin, and they were there for just a couple hours, and their kids were in the kids club, so they could get off without their children. But if you were planning to get off with an unvaccinated child, you had to book a Royal Caribbean excursion. I think that's why we had a very hard time booking any excursions. They were pretty much full, because I think that's because anybody who was traveling with a child, a young child, they were just booking those slots. Now at Castaway Cay, you wore your mask to get off the ship, and then that was pretty much it. They didn't really require it anywhere. You didn't need it to go eat. You didn't need it to go and get a drink. You didn't need it to walk to the beach or walk to the pool. They weren't really requiring masks at all once you got off the ship at Castaway Cay. So let's talk now about the shows. And I thought this was really interesting. So headliner shows like Mamma Mia, also Tony Tillman, who was fantastic. The lower level would be for vaccinated guests, and the upper level would be for those guests traveling with an unvaccinated child. When we watched the shows and we were on the lower level, we were not required to wear a mask. For the ice show, they would have shows specifically for vaccinated guests, and they would have shows for those people traveling with an unvaccinated child. In our shows, which were for vaccinated guests, we were not required to wear a mask once we were inside the theater. Also, for the main dining room, they had a level 3 that was designated for vaccinated guests, and they had another level for those traveling with an unvaccinated child. So you can see that Royal Caribbean is really doing their best to try to separate the vaccinated guests from those people traveling with a vaccinated child. I thought they did a really good job. Nothing seemed forced or anything like that. All the kids that I saw on the cruise seemed to be having a fabulous time. Okay, a couple things about disembarkation. One is that if you were unvaccinated, so if you were an unvaccinated child over 2 years old, you were required to register for a COVID test and take a COVID test before you could get off the ship. And one more thing that was different. On the day that we got off the ship, instead of gathering in certain areas like the theater or in the halls, they asked everyone to please go have breakfast and then just go back to your stateroom and watch your TV until your party was called to get off the ship. So that was my experience on the very first official sailing of the Allure of the Seas. All in all, we had a fantastic trip. Everything was great. It felt so good to be at sea again. The crew was ecstatic to be back at work. It was one of the nicest cruises we have had. I'm so glad that the ships are sailing again. Wearing a mask didn't really seem like a big deal because you were just really wearing it from your stateroom to the pool deck or from your stateroom to the casino, and then you could take it off. So if you're worried that you're going to have to wear a mask the entire time, I know on some sailings I have heard that you have to wear a mask during shows, but because Royal Caribbean is separating the vaccinated guests from those traveling with an unvaccinated child, we didn't have to wear masks. So it really wasn't that big of an inconvenience at all. I will be doing a full cruise review, and spoiler alert, we stayed in a Crown Loft suite. We got a great deal, but I'll tell you all about that in my next video. So please subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you'll know when I upload the full review and tell you absolutely everything we did and show you all of the fun that we had. So until then, I hope you have a great day and happy and safe travels. Thanks for watching. were stricter about this in St. Thomas for sure. We went to Magen Bay, and if you were laying on the beach or you were at a table eating or drinking, you did not have to wear a mask. But if you got up to order another cocktail or to get some good Caribbean food, even if it was an